All right, so are you ready to dive into something a little creepy today?
Oh, yeah, definitely creepy.
We're talking obsession, love, death, the whole nine yards.
Oh, works?
We're going deep on a case that'll stick with you, that's for
Oh,
sure.
yeah, for sure.
Eh.
This is Carl Tanzler and his, well, they call her the Corpse Bride.
So, like, this really shook people up back in the 40s, huh?
It did, it did.
Okay, so let's, like, start with the basics. Who was this Carl Tanzler guy?
Well, he was a real enigma, German-born,
Okay.
and his life, even before all this, it was pretty interesting.
Oh, really?
Traveled all over, lived in Australia for a bit,
Oh,
even a prisoner of war in World War I.
no way.
Yeah, trained as a microbiologist, bacteriologist, too.
That's going to be important, huh?
Oh, yeah. And get this, he was married, had 2 daughters before he got fixated on Helen.
So he wasn't like, some kind of lonely weirdo from the get-go?
Not at all, no. Seemed to have a pretty normal life until he met Marie Elena Helen Milagro de Hoyos in Florida back in 1930.
So that's the soon-to-be corpse bride.
Sadly, yes.
But their meeting wasn't like a typical love story, I'm guessing?
Far from it. Helen was young, beautiful, Cuban-American, only 21.
Okay.
Tanzler was in his 50s.
That's a big age gap.
It is.
What was it about her, though, that, like, I don't know, grabbed him so much?
Well, according to Tanzler, it was destiny. He actually claimed that he'd seen visions of Helen when he was young.
Visions.
Visions, yeah. He said the spirit of an ancestor, some Countess Anna Constantia von Cosel, had shown him his true love's face.
Hold on, he's seeing ghosts.
That's what he said. And when he met Helen, he was convinced, just like that, she was the one from the visions.
That's a bit much, even for a love story, don't you think?
Oh, definitely. Shows how deep this obsession went right from the start.
Right from the start.
But Helen's life, it wasn't a fairy tale. Her husband left after a miscarriage, then she got diagnosed with tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis, that was pretty much a death sentence back then.
It was. Very serious, especially in the 30s. Not many good treatments.
So Tanzler, with his medical background, he tried to save her.
He did everything he could. Gifts, devoted care, all his knowledge. But Helen just kept getting worse.
Man, that's gotta be rough. Watching the woman you think is your destiny just slipping away.
Tragic, really. And then in 1931, Helen died.
Oh, man.
Tanzler was just destroyed, paid for the funeral, lavish thing, even had a mausoleum built.
Wow.
And he visited that tomb every day for 2 years.
Every day. That's intense. Like, even just the mausoleum visits, that's hardcore.
It is. Seemed like pure sorrow, but then it took a really dark turn.
So we've talked about him being devoted when she was alive. What happened after she died?
This is where it gets really creepy. Tanzler decided he just couldn't be without Helen, even if she was gone. He claimed Helen's spirit came to him, begged him to take her from the mausoleum.
Wait, he dug up her body.
He did. In the middle of the night, took her right out of there, brought her back to his house.
I mean, grave robbing is one thing, but this is a whole other level.
It's disturbing, no question. And he lived with her body for 7 years. Tried to preserve her as she decomposed.
7 years? He kept her body in his house for 7 years?
He did.
What did he even do? How do you even begin to preserve a body like that?
It's pretty gruesome. Wires, hangers to hold the skeleton together. Stuffed her with rags to keep some shape.
Oh, God.
Even replaced her skin with, get this, silk, wax, plaster.
Like a really messed up doll. That's awful. What about the smell?
Perfumes, preservatives. He used it all. Made a wig from her actual hair, dressed her up in gowns, gloves, jewelry. He thought he was keeping Helen alive.
That's so messed up. So it's like he built this whole fake world, this fantasy where Helen's still with him. Did anyone know, though?
For a while, it was a secret. But then, rumors started flying. Helen's sister, she got suspicious.
Oh, man. That must have been terrifying for her. What happened when she found out?
She found out the truth. She found Helen in Tanzler's house.
Seriously, he was just keeping her body in his house this whole time.
Yeah. You can imagine how this rocked the community. Police were called. Tanzler got arrested.
He was arrested for all that.
He was. And when they examined Helen's body, the pathologist found something else. A paper tube inside her.
A paper tube? What was that about?
That suggested something even more disturbing. Necrophilia. Attraction to corpses.
Oh my God. This is just getting worse and worse. What did he say for himself? How could he justify any of this?
In court, Tanzler said he was just doing what Helen's spirit told him to do. Said she talked to him, asked him to get her out of the tomb.
So he's saying he's not guilty by reason of insanity? Did that work?
Well, that's what he claimed. But, the doctors, they didn't find him insane, clinically speaking.
This whole thing is just wild. I mean, how does someone get so fixated, even after death,
Yeah.
across those lines? So what happened after the trial? Did they lock him up?
You'd think so, right? But believe it or not, they actually dropped the charges.
Seriously?
Yeah. Tanzler was a free man. Helen's remains, they went back to her family for a real burial this time.
They let him go after all that.
It shows you how strange this whole case was, The law just didn't seem to know what to do with him. How do you charge a guy who thinks he's, carrying out his dead girlfriend's wishes? It wasn't like a regular crime of passion, and he didn't seem to mean any real harm,
So how did people react to all this? I can't imagine it went over well.
Oh, you're right about that. People were disgusted, outraged. I mean, who wouldn't be? But then there was also this, morbid curiosity.
Yeah, I get that.
The papers ate it up. Everyone wanted all the gruesome details. It was a national sensation.
That's crazy. I guess people have always loved a good, creepy, true crime story. It's like we're both disgusted and fascinated by, the dark side of humanity.
Exactly. But for Tanzler, the consequences were very real. The community, they shut him out.
I bet.
The rumors, the whispers, the fear.
Yeah.
After something like that, he couldn't just go back to normal.
So what did he do? Did he just disappear?
Pretty much. Became a recluse, lived alone, just consumed by Helen's memory.
That's almost, I don't know, poetic, but in a really messed up way. He couldn't have her actual body anymore, so what did he do?
Well, Tanzler made a life-size effigy of Helen. A doll, basically, but really realistic.
Like a creaky doll.
Creepy, yeah. And he lived with it until he died in 52.
So he swapped a real corpse for a doll corpse. That's both sad and super creepy.
It's a weird look into, what makes people tick. His obsession, it just went beyond life and death. He couldn't let go.
It's like something straight out of Edgar Allan Poe, the way he clung to her memory. And get this, rumor has it, he died clutching that effigy.
Ah, that's a good story. Adds to the whole mystique. But his obituary actually says he was found on the floor. So who knows?
Okay, so we've got this truly disturbing story, obsession, necrophilia, a guy who just refused to let go, even in death. What's the takeaway here? What have we learned from this deep dive into the darkness?
It definitely raises a lot of questions, doesn't it? About love, grief, how far obsession can take you. Makes you think about what's acceptable, what's not. Even love, something we think of as good, can go really wrong. And it shows how society struggles to understand, to deal with behavior that's so out there.
It's a cautionary tale for sure, a reminder that sometimes love and obsession, they get dangerously close. What stands out to you the most about this whole thing? What's the most interesting part for you?
For me, it's Tanzler himself. It's like he was clearly in love with Helen, went to extreme and messed up lengths to keep her in his life. But then his actions were so wrong, illegal, scary even. It's hard to reconcile those two sides.
He's hard to categorize, isn't he? You can't just call him a monster or crazy. It's more complicated than that. There's this weird mix of tenderness and horror in his story.
Right. And that's what makes it so interesting, makes you think. It forces us to face this uncomfortable truth that even love can turn into something dark, destructive.
Makes you think about the limits of love and grief, right? Like, when does devotion become harmful?
Absolutely. And it brings up questions about mental health, delusions, how society should respond. Was Tanzler sick? Was he a victim of his own grief? Or was he just, obsessed beyond all reason? There's no easy answer.
It's a question that still fascinates and creeps people out, even today. The Corpse Bride, it's a powerful reminder that the human heart, with all its good and bad, is capable of amazing things. And terrifying things, too.
Yeah, it really makes you think about all the different sides of things.
Well, it does.
It shows how complicated people can be.
For sure.
One thing that I keep thinking about is how he tried to, preserve her body.
Right.
It's like he was trying to say no to death.
Yeah, it's like he was playing God, trying to stop something that, we just can't stop.
Right. Yeah.
Decomposition, it happens.
It's natural, yeah.
But that's what makes it so creepy, trying to fight nature like that.
Yeah, he made this, twisted fairy tale world
He did.
where death was just a little problem to solve.
Like a puzzle.
With enough willpower, some wires, and a bunch of silk and whack. A bizarre love story, for sure.
Tragic.
Fueled by grief, warped by obsession.
Yeah, and it ends with him all alone, miserable.
Makes you wonder, what if he had put all that energy into something else?
Yeah, what if he had kept doing medical research?
Right. Maybe even tried to find a cure for tuberculosis in her memory.
That would have been something.
It's a reminder that even when something terrible happens, we have choices.
We do.
We can let grief eat us up, or we can use it to do good,
To make something positive.
to remember the people we lost in a good way.
Man, this deep dive has been intense.
It has,
Love, death, creepy stuff, all in one.
like a horror movie, but real.
It's hard to believe this really happened.
It is.
So, what do you think out there, listener? What part of this story stuck with you? What are you to be thinking about later?
I hope you take away one thing from this,
What's that?
that people are complicated.
Yeah,
Love, grief, obsession, these are strong emotions.
they are.
They can make us do incredible things, good and bad.
Well said. And hey, if you want to know more about this case, there's a ton of stuff out there.
Books, articles, documentaries, you name it.
Just be warned, you might fall down a rabbit hole.
You might not want to come back from.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, keep diving deep.
Into all the mysteries of being human.
And remember, sometimes the best stories are the ones that make us a little uncomfortable,
A little creeped out.
the ones that show us the dark side of ourselves.